Oh, that was the perfect cork sound. Never ask what is down here or what I put in my glass for these kinds of videos. Just don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Daddy doesn't have a problem. Daddy Tim is doing there's nothing wrong. There's nothing. I would have absolutely no reason to consume any such chemicals or beverages in 2025. There was literally no reasons for me to do that at all. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's not bad. All right, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today, obviously, because I'm standing, I was going to do the green screen or the blue screen or a black screen because I feel like that's more appropriate for these kinds of videos. Normally when I do reviews or rants, this is going to be the zone. I didn't want to put the green screen back up because I just took it down. Normally I put it up for client work. I do a lot of client work and they have me record on blue screen or green screen. So that's normally put up, but it's just in the way. It's like right by the door and it's hard for me to get in and out. So I'm not going to worry about it. Also, it's fine. It's fine. So anyway, today I wanted to talk about Thunderbolts. This is gonna be a review, but a little bit more than just a review. There was a lot of people, and full transparency right out of the gate. I saw the movie, obviously. Why else am I talking about it? And I loved it. I loved it. Is it the greatest film ever? No. Is it the greatest Marvel movie ever? No. I'm not sure in what order it would line up. I'd have to look that over. I'd have to really put down my tier list or whatever. But it's definitely not in the bottom worst ones. And it's definitely one of the better ones since Endgame, but the bar's not high on that. But more than anything, I actually wanted to talk about the film in a way that most people are not. There seems to be a lot of confusion about the movie. There seems to be a lot of people that loved it, and there's a lot of people that hated it. And what's very interesting is some of the people that normally would hate certain Marvel movies seem to like, this, and/or some of the people that would hate the same movies seem to hate this. And so there isn't like a consistency as far as like who likes it and who wouldn't. Some of the people that I thought would have liked it didn't, or very much hated it. And then there's also some people that, they just shit on Marvel movies now regardless. Some people, that's kind of their brand, is just doing comical rants on movies. And I get it. But there also seems to be a lot of confusion when it comes to subject matter within the film. And this is actually why I liked it. Now, I'm going to get into spoilers later, but here's going to be the short version of it. I think it is one of the more emotional Marvel films. And I think it handles topics better than most. And it also is better when it comes to handling comedy and the kind of quippy characters. Some people would disagree, but I'm going to break that down as far as what makes it different from other Marvel movies where it's just there's quippy characters and they're constantly making jokes that kind of like ruin the mood. I'm going to get into that. Personally, I would give it a 7 or a 7.5 out of 10. It's not perfect. Absolutely not. I could 100% break down all of its flaws, but I could do that with any movie. And also, I'm never satisfied. I don't think I've ever given any film more than a 9. I'm very critical. But I'm critical in a very specific way. I am a writer. I'm an actor, I'm a voice actor. I've been acting since I was 6. I've been writing for, like 15 years, voice acting for over 20. Been doing this for a long time. I've worked in editing, I've worked in directing, I've worked in production, I've worked in sound and lighting and all that kind of stuff, and casting, and I've written tons of my own projects, I've written stuff for other people, I've made money on short stories and novels and stuff like that, so have a pretty diverse perspective when it comes to the entertainment industry. A lot of other people, they go as fans, they go as nerds, which is not a derogatory term, they go as professional film critics. So people go for different reasons, people perceive different things, and people enjoy different things for different reasons. This is not a film that is politically divided. Let me put it that way. This is not a film that has a political message that people are they're getting annoyed by. A lot of people are just kind of bored with Marvel. And I get that. There's a very valid reason for people to essentially be kind of done with Marvel, and I totally get it. For a lot of people, especially the fans, Marvel is essentially an abusive relationship with them. But I think that's a very flawed way of looking at these films. I think it's better to think at the films as individual relationships rather than relationship with Marvel itself. Because not every single one of the films has done you wrong, quote unquote. But people who are traumatized by the past experience with Marvel or the past, movie-going experience in general, they're now on edge. They got their guards up, and like anyone who has been in a severely abusive relationship, even if the person that you're with at this time isn't physically abusive, you do get triggered and get on the, defensive, even when they just raise their voice in a heated argument. Whether or not, they're actually being abusive or not, doesn't matter. You're just getting triggered. I feel like a lot of people, that's what a lot of people are that's where a lot of people are, is they're in this kind of, just kind of, the second they see anything that's like the usual signs or the usual suspects that are in a lot of other bad Marvel movies, they immediately just go, no, the whole thing is terrible. But I'm going to come at it from a little bit different of perspective and hopefully explain why some people view it differently than others and why I personally liked it. Whew, this is actually way better than I thought it was going to be. It's 100% sweet tea. Whew, that was a close one. First thing I would like to say is that as a writer, and again, most people are not writers, so most people don't know this, but as a writer, there is a huge difference between plot and story. Any film can be judged by these two main things. And a lot of people don't actually notice that there's a difference and don't actually think anything about it. They don't notice, they feel it. They feel the impact that either one of these have on them, but most people can't really break it down. Here's the difference. The plot is the simplified point A to point B mission of the characters in the story. It's basically the summary of the film. It's the point A to point B. The story, however, is the emotional impact that has on the characters. Whatever they're going through, the emotional impact all of this has on them. That's the difference between plot and story. Now, it's true, some films, their plot and their story are basically the same. There's not really too much deviation. Forrest Gump, for example, the whole thing is just Forrest loves Jenny. That's the whole thing. That's the plot, and that's the story. That's the whole thing. They are interwoven. And a lot of comedies and rom-coms, they will often have basically the plot and story go together because that is the mission of the character. And how they feel is directly connected to that mission. Either getting with someone, getting back with someone, getting over someone, what have you. That is the same thing. Normally when there's a divide between plot and story is going to be in sci-fis, actions, maybe westerns, stuff where there is a larger scale setting, something that is bigger than the characters that they're going through. And the story is kind of the internal battle or the internal struggle that these characters are going through. And so this Marvel film has a huge story, but the plot we've kind of seen before. Obviously, everyone online is making huge comparisons between Suicide Squad and Rogue One for this film, and those are fair critiques. Those are fair comparisons. I 100% get it. However, even those movies, that's not new. Other films in the past had done basically that exact same thing before. And we didn't give them, bad marks just because they were these things. No, we gave them bad marks because it was poorly written. It wasn't well directed, or it was chopped up and done a whole bunch of reshoots and re-edits and all this kind of stuff. That's what killed Suicide Squad. And that's, why a lot of people have issues with like Rogue One, is that there's unique special elements, not the fact that it does the kind of, wild band of misfits get together for an impossible mission. That's neither here nor there. So that review of Thunderbolts, though correct, is a very small fragment of the actual story. Now, before I get into the story and the plot too far, I do want to address some particular elements and some particular things that I saw people kind of shitting on this film for on a regular basis. Now, originally, I was going to reference or kind of do reactions to other critics kind of, bashing of this movie. And kind of point out where they might have gotten it wrong. But I don't want to mention anybody's names. I don't want to throw shade. I'm not in debate with anybody. This is my own opinion. Anyone who doesn't like the film is totally fine. Anyone who loves the film, totally fine. But I'm going to explain my perspective on it and why there might be different. The reason I say that is people think that a critic is correct or wrong. And that's not right. But mostly critics are just critics. They have their own perspective. They have their own opinion. They have their own point of view. They have their own reason they're reviewing things. So there seems to be a lot of people throwing dog crap at the others because they like the movie, and some people throwing dog crap at people for hating the movie. Again, that's an absolutely incorrect way of reviewing or even viewing a film. You have to be nuanced, and you have to understand that there is nuance. And what I mean by that is not everyone's going to like the same food, but we don't get mad at someone because they didn't like this food, even though, yes, some people do get mad. They're like, that's my favorite restaurant. But it's the same. It's taste. It's perspective. There's so many different things. There's smell. There's texture. There's a bunch of different things. There's also atmosphere and stuff like that. So basically the exact same thing with film critics. And so I'm saying that here to say I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm not saying that they're right. I'm saying here's why some people might be confused, and here's why some people might be angry about it or not understand it and not know why. So here we go. And this is now going to be the part of spoilers and total warning across the gate, just across the field. Yeah, you've been warned. If you don't want spoilers, tune out now. Like I said, I give it a 7.5. I think it's good. I liked it. But for those who actually want to hear why, that's going to get into the nitty-gritty, and that's going to be in spoiler territory. So, you've been warned. First, let's talk about the critics, the critical issues that a lot of people have. Not a lot of people, but a good number of people have with Yelena. I believe that's Yelena. Forrest Pugh's character, it just says Black Widow, so I'm guessing she's just officially Black Widow. I thought they were still going by her character name, but in the cast it says Black Widow. But whatever. Some people were saying that she was a typical Mary Sue, strong female protagonist, independent, whatever. That's not really true. Is she a strong female character? Yes. Is she the usual Marvel strong female character? Absolutely not. So normally what the general issue normally is a strong female character that's just better than all the men because they're men and she's a woman and women are better. And she has no flaws. She's just better at everything, kind of in the area of like the Mary Sue thing, which is not a derogatory term. It's an actual writing term. Mary Sue, and I think I've talked about this before, Mary Sue comes from back in the time of the original Star Trek. They had where you could submit fan fiction into paper or a magazine or whatever for Star Trek, and the one that they published just so happened to be one of the worst, and it was a self-insert character named Mary Sue, who was better than everyone. Everyone loved her. She had no flaws. The only people that disliked her were the villains, and she could easily defeat them. That's a Mary Sue. Black Widow in this film, Yelena, is not a Mary Sue. Not a Mary Sue at all. In fact, she fails quite regularly. And she gets bodied pretty often. She actually gets bodied by the male characters on a pretty regular basis, especially U.S. Agent and what's his name? Well, she gets captured by Winter Soldier when he captures all of them. Again, spoilers, shut up. And then Sentry just bodies everybody. So at no point in time does she feel that she's this super overpowerful, super strong, no one can touch her female protagonist. She's pretty grounded. She has no powers, and she literally just gets thrown around pretty regularly, which is perfect because when you're dealing with everyone else has superpowers, yeah, she would get absolutely thrown. Now, I think there was a couple things that I thought she didn't get thrown as far as she should have, or she didn't get as messed up as she probably would have if, for example, in the kind of the bunker fight with U.S. Agent, Taskmaster, Ghost, and her. Taskmaster, Ghost, and U.S. Agent, they all have superpowers to varying degrees. I think Taskmaster also had like armor that gave her advantages or whatever. But Yelena's she's got a gun. And in the trailer, U.S. Agent comes down with a knife on her. And then it cuts. But in the film, they added where she activates her kind of electrocuting gauntlets thing, the same things that her sister had. And it basically, locks up, U.S. Agent's muscles, so he's not able to push forward, which is something that would happen. Anyone who's been hit with a taser or been electrocuted, your whole body just seizes up. So that's why he's not able to stab her. Not the fact that she's stronger than him, but the fact that she's basically using electricity to lock up his muscles, so he's not able to stab her. So that's an example of how they have her with an advantage in that one instance, but it's not that she can just take on anyone bigger than her. In fact, she gets thrown around a lot, which is not a defining factor of whether or not someone's a good character, but it is a really good thing when you're talking about a character that you need to be concerned about, you need to be worried about, and you need to question whether or not they're actually going to be able to accomplish their mission. If at any point in time you have a character that can just easily win, no one's a threat, that's boring. Nobody likes that. And that's a Mary Sue. She's not a Mary Sue. There was also some people that, and this was a common issue, is a lot of people didn't like the way that U.S. Agent was handled. I personally, there are things that I like and there's things that I don't like. I understand why they did what they did with U.S. Agent. I get why he is kind of like, why he's so brash and why he's so kind of rude and, not very caring and sympathetic. And I get why he acts the way he does. If you think about, everything that happened in Falcon and Winter Soldier, basically he was, basically the new poster child, world's greatest hero. He was given the stamp of approval by the government and people loved him. And all of a sudden, he loses his best friend and kills a terrorist, actual terrorist, in front of people, and they don't know what's happening. So basically the news goes out that, he's, this monster. And they do actually address that. That was actually something that I did like, is I didn't just say that, no, he just killed an innocent man. He's like, no, the guy wasn't technically innocent. But it's a perfect example of how there's always two sides to a story in media or in politics that bleeds into the Marvel Universe, and how he's been vilified, even though technically he was justified in many ways. And that kind of pressure, that kind of perspective of how even his government and everyone who used to be cheering for him is now against him, that wore on his soul, that wore on his ego, that wore on his emotions, and made him very cold. And spoiler alert is his wife leaves him and takes their child, which makes him even more bitter, which makes him even more cold and more brash and more kind of careless and thoughtless and, kind of very angry. And he's taking that out on everyone. And that made a lot of sense. One thing that I do like is that even though he is very broken and he's very, clearly he's going through a lot emotionally, they have a moment between him and Yelena, Black Widow, and when everyone finds out that his wife left him, and that's why he's acting the way he does, she actually is sorry for him. And not in a I pity you kind of way, but just kind of sorry for the way that she's been basically sending that same kind of bitter energy back at him. And that's very, very good. In any other movie where you'd have a strong female protagonist, she would basically, the reason he's acting like this is because he's a toxic man. Toxic masculinity and all this kind of stuff. And she would just continue to shit on him. That would be it. But they didn't do that here. They actually gave a reason for why he's acting that way. That makes a lot of sense. And they have the female character who was basically throwing that back at him, sorry that she was throwing that back at him. She wished she had known, and probably would have done it differently if she had known that, he was dealing with some stuff. And another thing is, they don't present U.S. Agent like he's a joke character. He stands his own. He is a unit. He is a beast. He takes on, I think it's like 10 different armed soldiers by himself. Some of it you don't see, but he just mops the floor with them in a hallway. He takes on the 3 strong female protagonists on his own. He isn't the one that gets absolutely bodied or wrecked in the scene. That is Taskmaster. I think we all saw that one coming. So there you go. So people that are he's the guy, so he's the joke. No, that's not exactly how they presented him. Thor is a joke. Thor is a joke in the MCU. Everyone makes fun of Thor. Everyone shits on Thor. Thor's an idiot. He used to be rather competent, and he was just kind of, not from around here. But then they made him just this idiot joke. That's an example of that. And I guess we might as well go into the comedy and the quips and kind of how they tackle that going into the next character, because that's kind of his role, and that is Red Guardian. Now, I get people's issues with Red Guardian, because almost every single MCU film has that joke character, that character who's just there to say dumb lines or say dumb things or be, bizarre or out of the loop. Drax is a huge example of that being an ongoing thing, where he was just a joke, that he never really got his time to shine. He, was always getting thrown around and all this kind of stuff. But I don't think that Red Guardian is presented in the exact same way. I think Red Guardian in this is done better. Now, in the Black Widow film, he was a joke, and I absolutely hated how they treated him. They do him better in this one, but still keep his kind of goofiness consistent. But they do actually, again, give a reason why he's like this, and it's part of his hero's journey. It's part of his turning point. It's part of his kind of, his character arc. And there's a genuine moment when he addresses that. And this was actually something that a lot of people told me when I was, thinking about going to go see it. Some people were like, because some people know that I hate Korg. Korg is my least favorite character in the MCU, because Korg is the goof character, the one that always tells jokes, but unlike Red Guardian, he never has a serious moment. And if you take out Korg, almost all the movies are better. Any movie that he's in, I think he's in 3 or 4, they're 100% better. Korg is a terrible character. He sucks. He's awful. Absolutely awful. If you take him out of Ragnarok, it's a better film. Superior. Take, for example, the scene at the end of Thor Ragnarok. Again, if you haven't seen Thor Ragnarok, and this is a spoiler, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. But at the end, when Thor's world is exploding, everything he's ever known, everyone he's ever known, his friends, everything's gone. They're all gone. It's destroyed. Korg doesn't give a single shit everything he says is just a joke. That is very different than Red Guardian. Now, yes, Red Guardian is a goof. He is a comical goof, and he just says really silly, kind of dumb things for the vast majority of the film. But, again, there is a reason, and there is a scene that comes up that addresses that he has with Yelena. And she is crying. Now, there are two scenes in this film that actually made me cry. And I don't mean I was bawling out weeping. To be honest, Boromir's death got me a whole lot more. But I shed a tear or two in two scenes in this film. One of them was Red Guardian talking to Black Widow, Yelena. And she's addressing that she wishes that he was in her life when she was feeling alone, when she was, didn't know what to do, she was depressed, and she was, bored, and her whole world was crumbling, and he was nowhere to be found. He didn't call, he didn't show up, none of that. And he was basically her surrogate father, her father figure. And through this one scene, through this one interaction, there is not a single joke. These two, from the beginning that this scene starts, from this shot, they go into a dramatic moment and they stay in that moment until it's over. And that entire scene plays sincerely, emotionally, and there's no joke. No other Marvel movie that I can think of takes the goof character and does that. And he addresses the fact that, yeah, he's a screw-up. He messed up. He's a terrible father figure. He doesn't know what to do, and he addresses the fact that because he's a screw-up, because he's a goof, because he's a kind of a moron, he didn't think that she would want him in her life. And that's beautiful. That's amazing. Yes, he's the goof character. Yes, he has funny lines. Yes, he's constantly saying or doing things that are really silly, but that comes to a head, and there's a payoff there that you don't get with a lot of these other goof characters. So I think, yes, though he is the goof character, and that's why he's there, he's handled so much better. He doesn't ruin a sincere moment. And there's other sincere moments. After that, there's another very intense, deep moment where he cries. He cries, and it's after he's finally basically addressed the fact that, he genuinely wants, to be a family or wants to retain whatever kind of, family-like relationship. He wants to retain that, and then all of a sudden he thinks she's dead, and he just starts crying. And that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Some people may not see that way, the way I see it. Some people may miss it. But I appreciated that. Yes, he's a goofy character, but it was a really good, tender scene that isn't interrupted by a joke, and it's a payoff, and it continues forward. It's also the thing that kind of moves into the finale and kind of how they resolve the final issue. If it wasn't for Red Guardian, and it wasn't for him coming clean and opening up and being vulnerable, it basically wouldn't have ended positive. The whole film she wouldn't have been able to defeat Sentry in this, which now we're going to talk about Sentry. But she wouldn't have been able to, well, I say defeat Sentry, that's not even correct. They wouldn't have been able to win. They wouldn't have been able to end the threat if it wasn't for Red Guardian and it wasn't for her having that moment. That was very important. It was very necessary. And yes, it came from the goofy character. Now, let's talk about Sentry. Actually, before we talk about Sentry, I actually want to cover the villain? Villain, kind of? Actually, let's do a speed run of the final, the other female characters or whatever. Because I think it's Bucky, but he's a give or take. He's only something that drives the plot. He's not really something that drives the story. So, Bucky's fine. Nothing about Bucky was really a bother. Pretty much he was still a badass and a G the whole time. It's what I expected of him. Easy right there. Ghost, she's in the film, and she does help a couple times. So she's important. Without her, things would go differently, but she doesn't have a lot to do, which is a good thing. because there's a lot of other superhero films where they have a lot of characters and they give each one of them an equal amount of time and it gets convoluted. Some of the characters are going to have to be in the background. Some of the characters are going to have to be kind of minor roles. She was the better one to make a minor role, considering she had the fewest relationships with any of the other characters. Taskmaster sucked a bullet to the face very early on. We all saw it coming. We knew from the marketing she was going to get absolutely shot in the face or died. She gets shot in the face. Spoiler. And I have no problem with that. I'm guessing they want to, since so many people hated the way they tackled Taskmaster last time, they want to start fresh, and we're gonna get rid of this character. But I really feel bad for the actress because it's not her fault. She did exactly what they asked her to do, and I think with what they gave her, she did a good job. But that's that. Now for what's her name? Valentina. I was about to try to do her last name, De La Fontaine or whatever. There's a big joke about it. Valentina, it's not really the villain in the film. Not really the villain. And neither is Sentry, actually. We're going to get heavy into spoilers, but neither of them are the villains of the film. She's an antagonist, sure. She's kind of the reason that all this happens. She's not the villain. She's just a usual politician. Now, I saw some people that were comparing her to, like, politics of, like, right now, that's happening right now. No. If anything, she's a combination of Fauci and Hillary Clinton kind of combined together. Because she kind of did the...
You do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly.
I think the alcohol is getting to me. I can't think of what it is. But she's basically those two characters combined, essentially with the way that they're being, with the kind of the impeachment thing. That's more or less what she is. So, you know, I don't know what I was going to say, but yeah, that's her. I think this is starting to get to me. But yeah, so she's not really a villain. She's just a usual politician that's done some shady shit that's trying to wipe under the rug. That's it. She's just a vessel for the evil that is to come. The real villain, and again, is not Sentry. The real villain is the Void. And a lot of people don't really get that. I think a lot of people, from what I was reading, got confused. They didn't like Valentina as a villain, because he's not. And they didn't like Sentry as a villain, because he's not. The Void is the villain, which is a very different character than Sentry. I actually personally liked the way they did Sentry, especially considering, and this is, if I was a writer, I would have probably ran into a very similar issue and very similar struggle. Sentry is a very hard character to write. Some people didn't like the way he was written because they basically were still thinking of him as Superman, which he's not Superman. He's not Superman. He's one of Marvel's probably most popular Superman-type hero allegories, not allegories, but type of characters, in the sense that he's the most powerful. He, similar kind of power sets, except for Sentry has matter manipulation, telekinesis, telekinetics, that kind of stuff. But other than that, he's eventually supposed to be kind of a Superman kind of character. So a lot of people didn't like him being portrayed, thinking of him as Superman and thinking that it was a bad portrayal of Superman. No. As Sentry, he's good. Don't think of him as Superman. He's not Superman. Also, as far as his origin, that was pretty much spot on. That was pretty much spot on for Sentry. They pretty much nailed that. Guaranteed. Like, that was great. But the villain of the movie is the Void, which doesn't get a lot of screen time. You keep getting whispers and the effects of the Void, but you never really see the Void. Yes, you see the kind of the shadowy, blacked out silhouette of Sentry, which when he's basically the Void's avatar, which I think a better way of thinking of the Void and Sentry is Sidorak and Juggernaut. It's more like that. And Jean Grey and the Phoenix. That's a better way of thinking about it. It's not the same character. He's basically possessed with a demon. And the demon is the villain. So the way they handled it is probably the best that they probably could have done, given the current ranking of heroes and the current condition of heroes in the MCU as it currently stands. And what I mean by that is if they were to fight Century as Century, if they were to fight the Void as Century, no one in the MCU comes close. Even if you had Captain Marvel, Thor, Adam Warlock, Doctor Strange, and you had them working together, they probably still would have gotten bodied. Probably might have put up a good fight, but they probably still would have gotten absolutely wrecked. Especially if they're going with kind of his power set and how strong and powerful he is in the comics. So the only real way that they could actually dress him and actually deal with the character in a film as his first appearance is on the emotional and internal struggle. That's really the only way they could have. And I think they did a good job. Now, there's also some people that didn't like the way the depression was handled in the film. Now, for those of you who have been subscribed to my channel for a very long time, or those who know me personally, you know that I suffered from depression. I actually still suffer from depression. I have random bouts of depression. There's a lot of things that people don't understand about depression. There's two kinds. There is situational depression and there is chemical depression. Situational depression is when you are in a state that basically is overwhelming and brings you down. Think of Yelena. Even though she technically wasn't the depressed character in the film, she was bored, sad, lonely, not necessarily depressed. And I think that's one of the reasons that people saw that there was like a tonal shift or some kind of tonal inconsistency. It's like, oh, she's depressed, but she's also quipping. She wasn't the depressed one. Sure, she was, down and she was kind of, feeling alone and feeling lost, but she wasn't the depressed one. That was Bob. Bob was the depressed one. And the way they tackled him and his depression, which was more chemical depression, and I will explain the two because I do think it is relevant. Situational depression is obviously when, there's a lot of stuff happening in your life that's got you down. And because that stuff is eating at you, it's always in the forefront of your mind, your brain is constantly emitting those chemicals. But chemical depression is when your brain is emitting those chemicals even if there's nothing bad happening. Even if there's nothing technically to depress you, your brain is still emitting those chemicals. There's a chemical imbalance. Now, this is what happened to me. I started out in situational depression, and it lasted so long that it basically rewired my brain to where I kind of have bouts of chemical depression. That's more or less what happened to Bob. Because of his life, his abusive relationship with his father, and kind of how he was basically a loser and a drug addict through his entire life, that's basically the state that he's in. He's the depressed one. And you can clearly tell that it's more chemical depression because of the way he, acts around people. It's very unnatural. He's pretending. He's fighting internal brain chemistry to try to present himself as if he's totally fine. Yelena it's a lot more natural. She's just kind of bummed. And when she's not thinking about the thing that's bumming her, she kind of goes back to her regular rhythm. This is also very consistent with anyone in the military or anyone who has served overseas or anyone who's a police officer or anything like that. People that have seen some really messed up shit. That's why, U.S. Agent, Ghost, Yelena, and Bucky, and Red Guardian, all of them can go from this kind of like downtrodden kind of thing and then go back to being very, very quippy and, razzing on each other and, making puns and stuff like that. I don't know if you've ever talked to anybody in the military, anyone who's ever served. That's pretty accurate. Anyone who's gone through that, they're going to have a dark sense of humor. They're going to switch between the two. But when it comes to Bob, who hasn't been in the military, and that's basically been his entire life, yeah, he's not very good at putting on a genuine smile. Also, another thing that's a key giveaway that he is genuinely chemically depressed is the fact that he was happy to die when they shot at him. He didn't know he was bulletproof. This is in the trailer, so I don't want anyone griping about this one as a spoiler. But he was willing to die, happy to go out, especially as a hero. a lot of people that suffer from depression, they're happy to die, especially if they get to die as a hero. It's from everyone I've ever talked to that's also suffered from depression, it's a pretty consistent thing. And so the fact that when he saw an opportunity to make a difference or help people that helped him, and he, was willing to die, is basically suicide by firing squad. He didn't know that he was going to live, but there you go. And so that's kind of what's going on in Sentry. People think of Sentry as if he's supposed to be this all-powerful, confident god. He's not. He has the powers, but his weakness is himself, as opposed to Superman, which is magic, green rocks, red suns. Yeah. So, very different character. But when it comes to that, how they handled dealing with him, I get the last act is confusing, especially in the weird mind palace that's like a maze for all of them, and it's them dealing with their internal issues, and some people thought that it was cheesy. I didn't really see anything wrong with it, except for two things. There's two things that bothered me. The chicken suit thing, punching out the chicken suit guy, that was just there as a joke. It wasn't terrifying. I don't know why that was there. And then Red Guardian just ripping open a pillow or a stuffed animal, and he's just like, I got it. To be fair, I don't know what the hell he was fighting in the other rooms before he got here, so it could be that he was fighting a lot of those, and he's just now killing all of them if he sees them. If he sees another stuffed animal, he's shooting it in the face. I don't know. Who knows what he dealt with? But those were the two gripes. Outside of that, I think it was fine. It's definitely the weaker part of the film because it's kind of confusing and feels strange, especially for a Marvel movie, especially a Marvel movie with such a dark tone. But I don't really see how else they could have done it. Also, when it comes to weird worlds and weird parallel universes or in people's mind palaces, we had Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension. We had Doctor Strange in Multiverse of Madness, and they go through, one of them is like a honey world, bees, and they're gelatin, and Thanos turns people into silly string and Lego bricks, and, Spider-Man, Mysterio sends him into some panicky, long, dark hallway. We're not new to this anymore, so that's not that big a deal. Also, that happens a lot in the comics. I don't think you know this, but there's a lot of weird internal mind palaces in the comics, so I thought it was fine. And I do like that he was the only one to technically be able to stop the Void. But he did need help from them on an emotional level. Now here we get to the final really critique that I see a lot of people kind of throwing out, and that is the villain was defeated by the power of friendship. I hear you. I get it. But that's also every Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It's every one of them. So, and I actually liked it. I actually did. Again, it's showing that a small, powerless character who actually has no powers, had one thing that was actually hinted at throughout the entire film, constantly by Red Guardian, that some things can be handled and addressed without just throwing hands, without smashing stuff, without destroying things. And I think that is a good, not only message, but I think that was a good way of handling this particular issue. Because again, no one on this roster is able to take on Sentry, let alone the Void. And they make that abundantly clear. He mops the floor with them, and they get wrecked. So it shows that they can't go toe-to-toe with him, which is no surprise and makes sense. So the only way to address this is to break the bond or break the hold the Void has on him, on Bob. And I like that. I think it was handled well. I think it was done well. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Some people prefer the big spectacle fights. Some people prefer their Marvel films to have the contrast and the saturation, up higher, to be much more, vibrant and flashy. Some people like the nanotech helmets, which I think there's only like one nanotech helmet, but it doesn't come out like nanotech. It unfolds, and I like the way it unfolds, and that's Ghost's helmet. I think Taskmaster also has that. Anyway, there's a lot of things that's in this film that are actually addressing a lot of issues that people have with previous Marvel films. Number one, not having a villain that's scary. Genuinely creepy. Not terrifying, not the most evil villain it's ever been, but genuinely creepy and really gets you thinking. It takes the Goof character and gives him an actual explanation as to why he is the way he is, and he actually addresses it in real world, and he contributes to the team. He's very important. He's one of the most important characters in the film, believe it or not. It takes someone who is technically a hero, U.S. agent, and shows what happens when everyone kind of, lets him down. He's still a hero. He's still a badass. He's still an absolute unit on the field, but, he's broken and he feels betrayed, and he's also alone because his wife left him. And then it shows that, especially now that we're getting into, bigger villains, that even the smaller heroes do actually belong there, because that was one of the problems that we had with Endgame and a lot of the other films where it's like, we got all these like the characters with superpowers and super strength and flight, and then you just have Hawkeye and Black Widow, the original one. Why are they here? She's got a taser. She's running after Thanos. That kind of shit. And I think it is handled well. I think it is done very well. Also, Red Guardian's new suit isn't the usual Marvel over-detailed MCU-ified affair. The one who has the over-MCU-ified affair is Sentry, because he gets it from the kind of the big, rich political, marketing person, Valentina. So I think that was a fun nod of the over-MCU-ified outfit goes to the character who gets an outfit from someone who's basically just thinking about optics and all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, the heroes' outfits are a lot more streamlined. They're a lot more down to earth and, a little bit more toned down, which I think is, again, really, really good. So that's my review of the film. I think it's good. I think it's, definitely, I don't know if I'd put it in a top 20, and that's only because there's so many Marvel movies now. I have to really go down the list, but I liked it. I could definitely go and see it again. I don't have to, but I would definitely go see it again. I liked it. I think it was good. And I think it addressed a lot of issues, especially when it comes to, the lead and the Mary Sue-ness and the strong female protagonist and having heroes that are too powerful and blah, 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 blah. I think it addresses almost every single issue that we've had for a while. The final thing that I'll say is I know a lot of people are very upset with Disney. And for valid reasons. I will never say that you were wrong. I also think there's a lot of people that are kind of disappointed with the direction that the MCU has been going, especially since Endgame. That's also valid. However, I would say that instead of giving up on all the movies and all the TV shows, because they're still going to be making them even if you don't watch them. They're still going to be filing for, that it was a financial failure. They'll still be getting tax kickbacks. They'll still be borrowing money from big international banks. They'll still be making these movies. So I would say it's better for us to go and watch the good ones, even if they're not perfect, because we need to aim the studio in the right direction. Whatever that direction is, we need to aim them in that direction instead of not seeing any of them. Because that means we're also not going to see the ones that are okay, the ones that are good. And I think it's better for us to say, no, more like this. More in this direction than this, but this is a good start. And I think that's totally fine. So yeah, that's going to be it. That's my review. I'm gonna finish this off. This is actually really good. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Thank you guys for watching. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Totally fine. Subscribe if you're new, bell for notifications, and if you'd like to see me review any other movies, let me know down in the comment section below. I'm probably gonna have to put that kind of stuff on a different channel because I don't think that belongs here. But anyway, that's gonna be it. And until next time, peace.